So ChatGPT is very impressive and all, but did you know that the code behind it is actually not all that difficult? I assumed that it would be, and that it would be extremely expensive to train something like that. But it turns out that if you're willing to drop your standards a lot, then it is possible to train a GPT model for fairly cheap. So I managed to train my GPT-2 model in about 2 hours, and it only cost me around $30. And you could do it too. All I did was I followed a tutorial from Andrej Karpathy, and then I used his code and ran it on a cloud computing service. I used Lambda Labs, and I actually ended up paying quite a bit more by accident because I didn't realize that as soon as you make an instance, they start charging you rather than when you start running things. And it took me so long to actually figure out how to use it. So you can see that it says that I was using it for 2 hours and 40 minutes when actually I was only running the program for an hour and 20 minutes. So when you take in the hourly rate of $23.92 per hour into account, the amount that I totally spent was in fact $31.99. So yeah, not too expensive. The rest is just because of my stupidity. And the result is basically as good as GPT-2. How good is that? Well, I'll let you judge that with some sentences that the model produced later in the video, but spoiler, it's not that good. But it blew my mind that it was so easy to make a GPT model. So what is a GPT? Well, before ChatGPT came along, all we had were GPT models. And you can think of these as like really, really good autocompletes. So for example, I might ask ChatGPT for a limerick about my dog and tell it a couple of things about my dog, and then it will spit out a fairly good limerick. But you can't just ask a GPT model to do things like that for you. But instead, if I started off a limerick about my dog, then it might try and autocomplete it. Well, this is obviously way less helpful than ChatGPT because you can't just ask it to do things for you, but it doesn't mean that it's dumber than ChatGPT. In fact, these GPT models, even though they are just autocompletes, actually know a lot about the world. So, for example, let's say that I tried to get it to complete this sentence that you might find in a physics textbook. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle doesn't just apply to position and momentum. It applies to all pairs of operators that are. Think about how you would complete this sentence. And now let's see what the GPT says. There we go. That was correct, and it's giving me way too much information. The answer is non-commuting. And that's something that most humans would probably struggle to autocomplete, because the only way that you could do this is by knowing quite a lot about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. And that's the same for GPTs. The fact that they can complete these sentences suggests that they actually do know a lot about the world. It's just really hard to get that information out of them usually. Instead of just asking this question that I want to ask the model, I'm going to embed this question into a fake dialogue. So I'm going to say, human. What property must a pair of operators have in order to have a Heisenberg uncertainty relationship? And then I'm going to pretend that there's a second character called the helpful and clever robot. And it's going to reply with, in order for a pair of operators to have a Heisenberg uncertainty relationship, they must be non-commutative. So there you go. You've basically hacked a way to turn this auto-completing system into an assistant. So that's one naive way you might go about trying to turn a GPT model into a ChatGPT model. The reality is that it's actually very hard to do this and to make sure that the model is like helpful and not going to say anything terrible. So there's actually tons of work that goes into that. But you can see how the GPT model at the base is the thing that knows stuff. It's the brains. And the ChatGPT model is just a way to interface with that knowledge. The way that these GPT models are trained is that they're shown loads of text from the internet. So that could be blog posts, newspaper articles, forum posts, etc., etc. When the model is getting trained, it'll see a snippet of text, and just like we did, it will try and predict the next words. Now, at first, the guesses will basically be random because this GPT model is not very good. But eventually, the model learns things by seeing more and more text, and it gets better at guessing what should come next. So that's what happens when I run this code. Each of these lines reports to me that the model saw some new data, and then this loss is about how bad the guess was. Now, eventually, you can see these loss numbers come down, which means that the model is starting to learn. Well, then how good does my model get? Not that good. You see, this project is trying to replicate GPT-2, which is the model from back in like 2019. We're now at GPT-4. So in the meantime, these GPT models have gotten way, way better. But the difference between GPT-2 and GPT 3.5, which is the one that originally wowed the world in 2022, is mostly just in the amount of data that it was trained on, and also the number of layers. In other words, like how big the model is. The actual code hadn't really changed in between. But impressively, this model does get up to the level of GPT-2, and probably using less data as well. That's because the data that it used was about 8 terabytes of like quite curated educational data from the internet. And it's well known now that higher quality input data leads to higher quality output data for these GPT models, which is probably why this GPT works so well. So, without further ado, I'm going to show you what happened when I trained my GPT-2. Oh my god, it's training. Whoa. Okay, I guess I just leave this on overnight. You can see the losses are going down kind of slowly. Every now and then it will spit out a sample so you can kind of see how well it's doing. I'm a language model, and the next place, as they may still, as you really do, I may make you your user people. What? Hello, I'm a language model, and I can remember the words I know when I was not speaking English. You can read a book on the English translation something. Okay, now we're about a quarter of the way through, so let's see some samples. All right, hello, I'm a language model. This is a fun game. Your kids won't worry about it, but I can easily help them learn to use. This is slightly better than before because it's not just grammatical, but it also kind of coherently keeps a single thread of thought, which is that there's some game to be played. So that's kind of good. Okay, so it's been about 40 minutes and we're about halfway. So here's what it says. Hello, I'm a language model and I am a programmer in the machine language, but I always have little training to get started. That's really weird. I'm not sure if that's really improved. The loss has gone down quite a lot, but yeah, I don't know, the quality seems to be petering out. Hello, I'm a language model. And what's the real thing? All I see is I'm a system, a kind of system, a system. Oh, that's a little bit depressing. Okay, we're getting really close. This is up to step 18,000 and something, and it needs to be 19,000 to finish the whole run. Let's see how this is looking. Okay, hello, I'm a language model. I'm going to talk a lot about how I've structured my lessons because I want to develop all the elements necessary. Okay? Okay, we are almost at the end now. I don't know if there'll be another set of examples. Oh, yes, there is one last set of examples. All right. Well, let's see. Just let this finish. Okay, and that is the very last one. Yeah, okay, this is it. Okay, so the validation loss is 3. It started at around 10, and the hella swag accuracy is about 0.3, which is a bit better than random. And let's look at one of these sentences. Hello, I'm a language model, and what's the name for it? That's great, I can speak English. It makes me happy. That's kind of a nice sentence. You kind of can speak English, GPT-2. Wow, this is so cool. I can't believe this is my language model that I've trained.